China is no longer one of the cheapest places in the world to produce garments. What's more, the workers are getting younger and younger. How are factories coping with these challenges? Let's take a look.
This alarm sounds about every 3 minutes to remind the workers on the zigzag-shaped production line that it's about the time they finish one relay. Weng Luosen is the mastermind behind the workflow. The pajama company owner began with just one sewing machine at home 2 decades ago. He has since established a Korean-styled homeware brand that employs more than 500 workers. Weng shares one secret of how he divides his factory's 5th and 6th floors.
我们目前呢有2种流水作业，有一种呢是 At
the moment, we have 2 types of production. One is the traditional approach in the Chaozhou Shantou region, where every worker completes one piece of clothes from beginning to end. The advantage is that the workers are very used to this workflow. The other approach is production lines on the 6th floor. Each worker is like in a relay race. These workers are relatively younger. This approach achieves higher efficiency.
相对来说，他的员工呢比较年轻。
But Weng is unwilling to rush his skilled workers on the 5th floor into doing simpler jobs on the 6th. He intends to spend 2 years making that move.
很多的制衣行业都存在着一个问题哈，中国的。
I believe many industries in China face the problem of employment shortage. For our clothing industry, we don't want to lose this group of skilled workers. Only when the portion of young workers born in the 1990s increases will we complete the transition to production lines.
However, people born in the 1990s don't just work for a living. 25-year-old Lin Xiufen spends her days on the 6th floor. She does the job from 8 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. every day and takes off 2 days a month. She earns the regional monthly average of about 3,000 yuan or $500 and sends 2,000 yuan to her parents. Lin's dream is to become a fashion designer, yet the biggest problem she faces is dating.
现在就是不认识的人，那像那些阿姨啊，你一跟她说这个年龄，她等一下就说可以找个男朋友，可以结婚了，这样子。
It's Wednesday evening at another pajama factory in Chaonan County. It's payday, so most workers are enjoying an extra evening off. Manager Wu Hanfeng has been with the factory for more than 20 years. He says it's customary for factories here to provide workers with free meals and dorms.
Our cost of labor has increased by at least 40 to 50% in the last 5 years.
In fact, the numbers show that China is no longer one of the cheapest places to produce garments. The minimum monthly wage here far exceeds that of countries like Bangladesh, India, and Cambodia, places that are attracting more and more factories. Back at the Chen Shaochao's bra factory, the owner and his wife Chen Chuhua are walking around the workshop. Chen Chuhua herself had worked on the production line when she was young. She says that each year after the lengthy Chinese New Year holiday, factories like theirs experience a worker crunch.
像汕头这边有一个特色，员工一般他如果在一个企业
In Shantou, workers will stay at a factory for 1 year if everything is okay. After the Chinese New Year, those who want to change a job will leave. So that's when every company is competing to hire workers most fiercely.
的时候，也是各企业员工竞争最激烈的一个时间段。
Chen says her company tries to hire workers by offering attractive pay and benefits. Weng Luosen, meanwhile, asks his human resources department to survey his workers at the end of each year to get a projected idea of how many workers will return after the Chinese New Year.
So, Professor Jia, from the video we just watched, so the pajama factory owner, Wen Luosen, said he's trying to push his more skilled workers into doing simpler jobs. This is what we call a Fortas process, meaning breaking down the production process into multiple steps and very highly standardized steps. So what industrialized societies have actually gone through this process, and what are the benefits and problems of making such a move?
You know, Tracy, I think what this pajamas factory practices is essentially the idea that Frederick Taylor proposed in his book. It's called The Principles of Scientific Management back in the early 19th centuries. There are several benefits to his so-called Taylor best practice. One is it does increase efficiency, and it's not just the efficiency that's gained from day-to-day, productivity, but it's also the efficiency that's gained from not having key person dependency. If you dismantle a really complicated task into smaller steps and simple steps, then it alleviates the concern of on-the-job training. So you don't really have to train your new employee before you can put him or her on the product line. And another benefit is that once the job is broken down into tiny steps and is highly standardized, then you can directly observe the performance of every workers, right? So which makes management and also performance evaluation much easier and straightforward. So these are the benefits. In terms of the downside, I think the so-called Taylor's best practice does encounter a lot of criticism and pushbacks. Perhaps the biggest criticism is the fact that with this approach, it doesn't really motivate workers, right? So Taylor's practice is actually at odds with a lot of current other practices that includes, for example, MBO, management by objectives, or continuous improvement initiatives, right? So these approaches actually focus more on individual accountability and responsibilities, and they seek to push decision making through all different levels of the organization. So the idea here is you should give your worker as much autonomy as possible and allow them the flexibility to choose the best practice for situations on hand. So another issue with the so-called Taylor's best practice is potentially high setup cost. Given that Taylor's best practice involves in dismantling a complicated work process into multiple steps and become highly standardized. Well, the design at a high level, how to break down the flow of the work and how do you design the process is very important.
Well, Professor Jia, speaking of human resource management, how should they effectively motivate and retain their young workers?
Right, Tracy, I think this is a great question. I think the problem with scientific management, that's what these OEM companies are doing. The problem is that it tends to focus too much on the mechanics, but largely ignore the value of people side of work, where I think motivations and workplace satisfactions are very important components of a successful and productive organizations. So I think to motivate young workers, as we've seen from the video, a lot of them are actually born after 1990s. You need to engage them not only physically but also mentally, right? Try to incorporate their knowledge, their background, their experience into the best practice. And I think a lot of the young workers in China nowadays, they're motivated not just by money, but they are also motivated even more by how interesting this job is and whether or not they're able to find a sense of fulfillment or a sense of accomplishment in this job.
I see. Well, China is slowly yielding its manufacturing-based economy towards a more original, innovative, and creative path. Thank you so much for your insight, Professor Jia. Always nice to have you here.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for having me.
Well, folks, on that note, we end this edition of New Money. Thanks for watching, and see you at the same time next week.